And welcome to yet another edition of FOL Marketplace. My name is Dennis Jha, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In the wake of the fourth unexplained death of someone who is relating to audit or auditing in Liberia, FOL has invited someone with an auditing background both in the USA and Liberia to share some light on how auditing is done in Liberia. First, before we begin, our hearts go out to all those fine Liberians who have lost their lives under these unexplained circumstances while serving in various auditing roles in our country. And those are Mr. Albert Peters, Mrs. Gifty Lama, Mr. Robert Fambutu, and now Mr. Emmanuel Nyenswa. These are brothers and a sister. They die in Liberia under some unexplained circumstances. I don't want to say mysterious, but I would say that way too. And we still can explain why. We don't know why, but they were all auditors, or they were performing some auditing, serving in auditing roles. So in the wake of that, there has been a lot of things in the news regarding audit in Liberia. So we've invited Mr. Alex Cuffy, someone who is no stranger to auditing, both here in the US and also in Liberia, to share some light. So we want to say welcome across the globe, ladies and gentlemen, to FOL Marketplace. I want to welcome my co-host, Mr. William Thomas Bernard King. Welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you so much, Dennis. And once again, our hearts and heartfelt condolences goes out to the family of those professionals that were lost. And, definitely you have us in our prayer. Moving forward, this is Focus on Liberia, the marketplace. We strive to elevate, promote, and educate all things Liberia. And we're going to be looking at the audit background, like Dennis mentioned. And today joining us is Mr. Alex Cuffy, who is a audit professional with years of experience working with PricewaterhouseCoopers, one of the #1 accounting firm in the US, with a headquarter in the US and offices in over 170 countries globally. He has also worked as an internal auditor in the US and in Liberia. And Mr. Cuffy finalized the strategy that gave birth to the Internal Audit Secretariat, now known as the Internal Audit in Liberia. This is someone that has the width, breadth, and depth background in auditing and understands from a global perspective audit and also in Liberia. And he has been an instructor of audit at the university level for over 12 years. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to welcome Alex Cuffy, Mr. Alex Cuffy, to the show. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you, William. Thank you, Dennis, for having me. And let me say hello to all those in the listening land. We hope, I hope that we'll have a good discussion here today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Cuffy, I also want to mention, besides your auditing background, you've worked also in Liberia as a Chief Executive Officer of the FIU, and you have your fingerprints on the PIT report. I want to mention that.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We're going to be talking about auditing in Liberia. Audit, we want to kind of have someone who explain this to us first, or tell us what audit is and go through all the 9 years, and then we're going to delve into Liberia. So ladies and gentlemen, if you are watching us, please hit that share button, invite someone, and let us get this going. Back to you, William, to get this started.
Thank you very much. So Mr. Cuffy, tell us, what is an audit?
Okay, so let's look into the definition of auditing. Auditing has, it depends on which book you open or what you Google or whatever it is. it has different definitions. But if you put all that together, having been an instructor of auditing for a number of years, more than 12 years, auditing is basically an independent evaluation of different things. It can be financial, it can be processes, it can be systems. I mean, it can be information management system, IT system. It can, like I said, it can be financial system, it can be operation system, and it can be processes. And then you will imagine that even when they have these Miss World beauty pageant and stuff like that, that's a process, that's a program. So you can have auditors in the background who are checking that as well, who are confirming. So basically, it's an independent evaluation of a process of financials to provide an assurance, not absolutely definite, but some level of assurance that the financial records, if it's financed and it's okay, or if it's a process, the process was done properly, and if it's a program, the program was executed very properly. So basically, it provides owners of organizations, owners of programs with that assurance that they've done a good job.
So with that definition, should anyone be worried about auditing? Like auditing, from what you say, is not like a criminal investigation.
No, auditing is not a criminal investigation. Is even though sometimes people use the words investigation, but auditing is an independent assurance. So it just provides the assurance that yes, we did a good job of our finances that we're putting out there. Sometimes we use the word accessions. So the words that we're putting out there, the figures that we're putting out there, the processes that we're putting out there, the results that we're putting out there, it gives some comfort to users of that kind of information. So that is what it is. It's you got different types of audit. You could have a forensic audit, which goes beyond, which goes to verifying signatures, digging behind things, digging up more information and more records and things like that to bring evidence, proper evidence. But auditing in itself is just reviewing the books and giving a comfort level that what you guys did here. It could be also an advisory service, so you can provide advice that, hey, what you're doing here is not correct. Can you fix it? Or on the other hand, oh, you're not following the processes. You're not following international norms. You're not following the government laws. If it's tax, you're not following the tax laws. If it's payroll, you're not following the payroll tax calculation and things like that. You're not following government laws, or you're not following international conventions and things like that. Because auditing is guided by the international agencies on auditing. There are different levels. In the US, they got the internal audit organizations that even grant certification. Auditors are held by specific ethics and code of ethics and things like that. Sometimes auditors that take these international license tests that pass those tests, like for example, they got the certification called a Certified Internal Auditor, which is called CIA. It's not the investigative CIA of the United States, but it's the professional certification called the CIA. So when you belong to those kind of organizations, the International Agency on Auditing, when you belong to those organizations, you're guided by specific code of ethics that guides you, both the person, that is your behavior pattern, who you are, your mentality, and all of that, and also guide that there's another structure. So the auditing standards, there are 10 auditing standards. So part of that belongs to the person. That is how you carry yourself about, the concept of independent-minded, a person with integrity and stuff like that, and how you carry yourself about it, how you conduct. And then also you talk about your qualification, whether you're qualified to conduct that audit. Then they have the the standards that look at the work that you do, the fee work, how you conduct the fee work, is guided by step-by-step procedures, which are documented. You don't just do an audit from your hip or from your head, but they are guided procedures. Even your reporting processes, they are guided to go through review processes that supervisors review, managers review, partners review, and things like that. Then they got two branches of auditing. They have the internal auditing and the external auditing.
Right, that's what I was talking about. You entered that. Go ahead.
So the external auditing is people from outside who are independent of the organization, who come in to conduct an audit and give an opinion, and then whether your if it's financial audit, whether your books of account represent a true and fair view of the figures and all the statements that you made. That is why in auditing, external auditing, the financial statement, if it's the processes, the programs and things like that, are the responsibility of the organizations. Auditors do not prepare your policies and procedure documentations. They do not prepare your financial statement. They do not prepare your program. They come they are like a referee on the game in a game of a football game. And by football, I mean football, I mean FIFA, not your American people call it grand sport, and people can call it soccer. It's in a football game. There's a referee on the floor who look over your shoulder. So auditors only come to look over your shoulder to tell the public that, oh, you've done a good job, or you have not done and so good a job. So the auditors, after doing the audit based on their audit procedures, their audit methodology they've adapted, the auditors can express an opinion, and that opinion can be four ways. It can go good, which we call a clean opinion. There are four different types. There's the disclaimer, there's the qualified opinion, the unqualified opinion. Unqualified means the books are good. Qualified means subject to something which is material to put the financial statement into disarray, or to give people less confident that they can rely on the financial statement. Maybe, for example, your bank accounts have not been reconciled to the extent that it may cast a doubt on the organization, or your receivables, or your inventory, or even your fixed asset, things that are of high value, like 10% of your total asset, or 10% or more, or 25% or 20% of your total liabilities, things like that. They are material that if they're not treated properly, it can be, or you can give a disclaimer and say, you know what, for these reasons, we can express an opinion and things like that. So when you have an audit report that is out there that has a disclaimer, then people may not want to do business with you. Suppliers, banks do not want to credit you money. Creditors out there do not want to do. But when you have an unqualified opinion, then people are happy. So it provides that assurance.
Right.
So those external auditors come from outside, so they have external audit organizations. For example, the entity that I work for, PricewaterhouseCoopers, or Deloitte and Touche. I mean, the big, we call them now, they call them the big four, KPMG, and those and they have the second tier, the national companies, different companies. In Liberia, we have PKF, we have Boscon, and things like that. So those are external audit organizations that are hired by and approved by the board of directors of the entity. On the government side, you have in Liberia, for example, even in America, you have the audit institution.
I just want you to talk a little bit about internal audit. You talk external. Talk a little bit about it.
I'm talking about external audit. On the Liberian side, for external audit, even though it's a government institution, but it's standard in nature, is the GAC, the General Auditing Commission, is an external auditing arm of the government. So they come into different ministries and agencies to audit, and then that is why their report functionally goes to the legislature, because they want them to be independent, and then administratively it goes to the president. Now, internal audit, on the other hand, is embedded within the organization. all right? So every organization has an internal audit department. Now, internal auditors do not perform audit to the extent that they issue an opinion. They may not conduct a full-fledged financial statement audit, but they conduct portions of the financial processes, mostly it's processes. For example, to ensure that they work to ensure that your procurement processes are meeting regulations, laws, and things like that. Your fixed assets are a representation of what you put in your financial statement. Your cash balances, the process of receiving monies, as you know, if you are earning money, if you're a money making entity, you're earning money, the whole value chain of the money being earned, being collected and put in the bank and being used for the proper, your budgeting processes. So mostly internal auditors look at the processes, the systems and things like that. Now, external auditors also look at all that, right? When they're doing that audit, they look at all that in one audit. Sometimes they call it system audit, starting from the financial system to the procedures, to the internal controls and all that stuff. But internal audit, their audit timetable is based on specific part of the organization and specific processes of the organization. And mostly it's advisory services. But also they can find stuff that put people in trouble, that can lead to people being fired and people being suspended or people being inducted into courts. Yeah, internal auditors can also find that. On the government side in Liberia, internal audit arm of Liberia is the internal audit agency. It used to be called the Internal Audit Secretary. Yeah.
Hold on. We want to set the basis first before we. So since you already started, let's go into Liberia and talk about. Let's start with the structure of auditing in Liberia.
Mm-hmm. Well, the structure of auditing in Liberia. Before I go into that, let me give you a little bit of. Let me just throw light on. Yeah, we talk about internal audit. We talk about external audit. What I was trying to say to you is that most people get it confused. You know, some people get it confused. The internal auditing agency is the internal audit part of the government. Now, so the structure of auditing in Liberia, if you go into that, in Liberia, let me go history. Okay, back in the day before 2000, before the GMAP processes, before Madam Sali came to, before the war got finished, Madam Sali came to power. After Madam Sali came to power, with the advent of the GMAP processes and things like that, we changed the stuff. But before that time, we had the what we call the General Auditing Office, which is now the GAC, the General Auditing Commission. So we always had the external arm. But over the years, there have been a lot of influence, over the General Auditing Office, the way audit was done. So audit was not done professionally, and there was a lot of collusion, and things like that going on. Internal audit was rather based in every institution, be a Minister of Internal Affairs, be any Minister of Finance, and every arm of government had their own internal audit department, where the bosses hire the auditors. And most of the time, too, auditors were not regarded. Auditor was treated as department tech team. Anybody, the chief vets with anybody or anybody is not productive, they send a person to internal audit. So internal audit in some organizations was a dumping ground because internal auditors were not regarded as being manipulated by the bosses and stuff like that, and they didn't have voice because they were not independent. So when Madam Salif came to power and the GMAP processes, the international organization from 2006, 7, thereabout, they decided to change things around. So that what led to the new General Auditing Commission law. So the auditing law was revised and they gave birth to the General Auditing Commission. So the General Auditing Commission was made to have more independent. The key was to ensure that the General Auditing Commission had that independence. So the independence meant that two things: independence in its operation and independence in its finances.
Okay.
So in operation, they had to make sure that the GSC reported directly. That's what we call functionally. By it function, it reported to the legislature. So that's why we have today. We have the part of the national legislature that deals with all these audit reports that have public hearing and things like that. Because the Auditor General is supposed to present an audit of every institution annually to the national legislature. And the national legislature need to look into the audit, make sense of it, and hold people accountable. GSC reports to the president of Liberia administratively. That is to say, the president is your boss, so you have to give a copy of the report to the president. You have to, tell the president what is going on. You have to have periodic meetings with the president and things like that. But your independence lies within the fact that you are reporting to the national legislature, because the three branches of government is a separation of power on paper. So by financial autonomy, the GSC is supposed to receive quote unquote enough financial resources from the government to carry on its job. So those things have to be there. So, and then the other aspect that made the GSC independent is that the fact that the Auditor Generals and the Deputy Auditor Generals had a tenure. Because the understanding is that once you have tenure, you are not easily manipulated by the president or the ministers or things like that, because you will have your tenure for a number of years, and after those number of years, the president can reappoint you or let you go, and another person will come. So that's how the auditing commission was.
So the IAA, right? That's the
Yeah. So after that came about.
Before you said every ministry has its own internal auditors, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now with the advent of the IAA is the one that is serving as that internal auditing firm for all the ministries. So there are no independent, there are no internal auditors embedded in those ministries anymore.
Yeah. So after some years, after the GSC team was dealt with, then there was a need now to deal with the internal audit. So the internal audit secretarial strategy was made. It was done. I did some work finalizing that, going over that document and sort of doing some editorial and finalizing. So that agency was formed. So all those auditors, those internal auditors that were within various lines, ministries and agencies and commissions were now supposed to fold off into the internal audit secretary at that time. Now it's internal audit agency, so we'll call it internal audit agency. But they needed seasoned people, so they had to conduct some tests, and some people didn't make it, and all that, because they needed seasoned people to be there, people who could easily be trained and things like that. So the internal auditor was internal audit agency was started through that process, and some people did not pass the test, they did not pass the interview, so they did not make it. So effectively, internal audit into different lines of ministry should have been removed, and all these people should fall into. Now, they had something that you can call it a board of director, but they had a board, internal audit board, that the internal audit executive director will report to, in addition to reporting to the president, so that it creates that independence. So the good thing is your report, like the GSC report, goes to the legislature. So the saving grace is, even if the minister comes with anything, he said, my report gone already, so there's nothing I can do about it. if the president wants to come down on you because the federal minister report doesn't look good, your excuse is, oh, you already sent it to the legislature. So the same way with the internal audit send it to the board. So that board, that internal audit board, of course, is comprising of different ministers, but at least it goes to the board, it goes to the president, so the non-minister cannot, bribe you or do something to you and things like that.
So let's talk about the process that this internal auditing, the IAA or the GAC will go through. Let's start with the internal audit. What time to do it, how to do it, or how to carry on? What was the process they follow for internal auditing for the line ministries?
So when the internal audit agency started, it had to take some time to bring entities on board the process. So they started with the entities that had more percentage of the budget. So they started with the Ministry of Finance and all this guys. So internal auditors were posted from the IRA. They were sort of seconded, but for a period of time. I think when they started with 6 months, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the 6th one was too short. So I think I was one of the person who advocated for it to be extended to 1 year, because the whole notion is that when the people get there, they will change them. So you send a group, say you send 4 persons to the Ministry of Agriculture. After 6 months, they are supposed to do internal audit. So normally in internal audit, a schedule is made. They review the budget first, they review other documentation, they review other performances. What is your percentage of the budget, or your share of the budget? If it's high, then you're in there. What issues have gone on, especially in previous audit, or when they look at the Ministry of Finance record and they look at this Ministry of Agriculture, I just using Ministry of Agriculture as an example, they look at all your different returns, they look at most of the troublesome areas, and then when they go in there, they do a whole program, they do a whole schedule of things that they're going to audit. So they go in there, they are assigned there for 6 months or for a year. So they are posted there. But they report, even though administratively they will talk to the minister, they will talk to the deputy minister, they will have meetings with them. But the reason why they are more independent is because they report to their boss, who is who until recently, he's my personal friend, Emmanuel Nyinswa. I've been a little bit in shock since around 1 o'clock this morning, my time. It's been tough to understand that my friend just passed in that way he passed. So, but they go back to, let me put myself together here, please. They go back to, they report back to the,
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing auditing, or auditing specifically in Liberia, how it works, what the processes are, what the history of it, and why is it that we are getting this news about, people that are associated with auditing in Liberia. We have 4 unexplained deaths just in 8 days. We are all in shock. Our hearts go out to all the families. Mr. Alice Cuffy, who is our guest tonight, is directly impacted, because those that have lost their life, one of them, especially the one today, is his personal friend. He was gracious enough to come and join us and share light on what's going on, what's all about this. So welcome. And again, Mr. Cuffy, we are sorry about the loss, and we know that how it has affected you, even when we spoke this morning. Thanks so much again for joining us in spite of this this very, very difficult period.
Yeah, so the internal auditor that are posted to the Bureau line of the ministry will report back to the internal audit agency, their boss. The report will be prepared, and it will be submitted to the rightful places, to the board and to the ministry, so that the ministry, again, sometimes because it's government, sometimes they too The internal audit agency had been in the limelight. They've been able to discover a lot of things. At the Ministry of Finance, they've given value for money. They've the procurement processes. They've been getting involved in, even when government procure items, internal audit has to go and basically verify those items. Even the process at the Ministry of Finance, that the voucher process, the process of allotment to different line ministries, they get involved in it. Sometimes they have to do review of the process to ensure that everything is good. So they got involved in the process, and they saved government some good bit of money that would have gone rather to papering and to people's pocket, if I may just describe that way. So they were very, 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 very relevant in the process. They also assisted with the whole payroll process. They were able to identify some good names.
Mr. You definitely mentioned there are two organizations with audit I've heard you speak about. Is one is the GAC and one is the IAA. How do they relate? And do they have different functions?
Yeah, that is a good question, William. They have different functions, first of all, but they can relate by the standards. Again, most of these things go by standard, by the international standards, which have been adapted by different countries, including Liberia. So they have different functions. They do auditing. Like I said from the beginning, GAC is an external audit arm, so they can do a full financial statement audit, a system audit that incorporates the financial system and all the process and procedures and all that. So they can do both substantive audit, as we call it, and compliance audit.
So for example, would that be the organization? I'm just trying to get clarity for our audience. For example, if we wanted NEC audit, we would send them there. If we wanted the LPRC to be audited, would it be? Would you start with the GAC? Is that the arm of the government that will go out to perform these type of audits?
Well, the arm of government that will go in to an entity to perform those audits is the GAC.
Okay.
The GAC has its own program as to what entity it has to audit. And that is governed by its own annual audit strategy. So yeah, the strategy may say, okay, what I do remember in the past, they were using the budget. So again, if you look at the budget, what percentage of the budget that you take? So for example, if the total budget is 500 million and Ministry X is taking 20 million, then you know that ministry is taking a good percentage chunk of the, or which ministry, most of the time, Ministry of Finance is a subject of audit because they are giving out the money. So their processes, their expenditure processes, the revenue processes will be audited by almost all.
The executive, can the executive branch directly tell the GAC, no, hey, I want you to go and audit this place, or is it no? I mean,
yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, I mean no. Because the president don't dictate to the GAC. Neither is the legislature dictating. The GAC, the Auditor General, with his staff, determine the focus of their audit.
Okay.
And it's guided by the standards. They got something they call into-side. I can give you the whole meaning. I don't want to go into that. They are guided by and GAC is part of this body. The AFO-side, they got the into-side is the international body on internal audit. Then that they have different branches, the West African branch, the different branches. So Liberia GAC belong to those organizations, and the framework is there that the GAC has adapted. And the framework can say you can select your audit based on different criteria based on different levels. So the GSC has to have an annual plan, an annual audit strategy, an annual plan as to which entity we're going to audit. And they have to even have timing dates to this audit, and they have to have auditors assigned. So these plans, the plan and the strategies are presented to the legislature for review and probably approval, and they are also presented to the president. The president can make suggestions and things like that, and things like that, but they do not detect. They are not supposed to detect to the GSC. Okay, so the legislature approved that kind of audit strategy, and they're supposed to approve it on an annual basis. And if that audit say we are auditing Ministry of Finance, expenditure section, or the entire government financial system, then you know by law, by the PFM Act 2, every entity of government is supposed to prepare their financial statement quarterly and at the end of the year and submit it to the Minister of Finance and the Auditor General. And the Minister of Finance at the end of the period also supposed to submit the government's account to the GSC. And then it's the basis of those accounts that the audit is done. And they could select different processes, different expenditure. Now, so they have the schedule. Now, yes, because that's the no part, but yes, because the president could also ask for a specific audit to be done. All right, a specific set of work to be done. If something happened at an entity and is reported to the president, and the president needs guidance on this process, the president can call the Auditor General or write to the Auditor General and say, look, I need this work to be done, maybe CC capital legislator or something like that. And yes, the Auditor General can mobilize resources, human resources and financial resources to conduct that particular audit or quote unquote investigation.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Mr. Cuffy, when is an audit considered complete? And what normally happens to the report? What do we do with it as part of from your experience?
The Auditor General, the GSC, because it's an external audit party, also issue an opinion. So once they issue an opinion and sign off, when the Auditor General sign off on the audit report, is considered complete and submits it to the legislature. So the date of the signing of that audit is the completion of that audit. So the Auditor General normally will sign off on it and put a date and put a stamp on it, on the opinion, and it's submitted to and it's also put on their website.
What's supposed to happen next?
What's supposed to happen now? The legislature is supposed to collect it. They call it the PAC, the Public Account Commission of the legislature, which is headed by two different, one representative and one senator, or two at each. So the PAC has a secretariat of technical people. Okay, the international agencies, the USAID, the World Bank, they help to sponsor all that kind of stuff. So the PAC, the Public Account Commission Secretariat, do the heavy lifting, look at the report, because sometimes some things can be in a report which are not called for. Some things are just different things that, so they have a public hearing. So the people that are mentioned in the audit, or the institutions that are mentioned in the audit, are called to hearing. And based on that hearing, people are either exonerated or they are forwarded to the president, or those kind of different, they are asked to pay some money back. And if they don't pay back, they can be sent. So like recently, before Ellen left power, there was a process where some reports were reviewed, and some people were actually paying money back. Mm-hmm. All right, some people were restituting monies. Right. So those things can happen. And some people were forwarded to the president. President advised some of them. Some people got off the hook because they defended themselves, and some of those things that were in the audit was not a true representation of what happened at the institution or what happened to that person. So some of those people were taken off the hook for those things.
Same question, but for internal auditing.
Yeah, internal audit, because they are within the organization, they too follow the internal audit, international internal audit framework. They have their own framework too. They too, because they are in the organization, they also have their own audit strategy, they have their audit programs, they too, they select what they, based on their strategy and their program, based on what it, because the strategies.
I'm referring to the IAA. Let's say, because you talk about the GSC, how when they sign off, that's complete and they file to legislature and then they will have a hearing. For the IAA, what do they do? If they file the report to their board and also to the president, a copy to the president, what happens next normally?
Action can be taken. Action can be taken by starting with even the head of the institution. And if it's the head of the institution, the president or the board, yeah, action can be taken.
Any history of that?
I can't remember, but I know I know processes. What I do know is processes were improved and money was saved because the IRA entered into what is a preventive auditing rather. So they ensure that they were there embedded in there before the thing happened. So for them, they raised certain issues that if the government or the ministry did not do it this way, government would have lost this amount of money on it. So what I do remember is, yes, I don't know, I can't remember that somebody was reported to the president or taken to court or something like that, or restituted some money because of internal.
Let's stay on that. Let's talk about other institutions. We call our integrity institution. I want to see how they kind of link. Like we already talk about the GSC, the General Auditing Commission. We talk about the IAA, the Internal Auditing Agency. Now the LACC, and I think there was a new one that was constituted. How they all relate or interrelate with the LACC and other integrity institutions?
Okay, that's a good question, Dennis. Like I hear people always say, "But we got all these integrity organizations. You know, we still have problems with corruption. We have this, we have that." And sometimes people can say, "But what?" People can be confused. What are their functions? You know, it's not a duplication of function. They're not just another organization formed to do a check. You know, to check the list because some World Bank or one international organization say we should do this. Yeah, those questions have been there, and I would tell you that these organizations have their own different functions within any government or within any country. Like now we talk about the GSC and the RAA, the demarcation. What I didn't talk about is the interrelationship between GSC and RAA. By the standards, again, I will talk about the standard because in audit, we are guided by these standards. I know you don't deviate from these standards. The standard calls for a relationship between internal audit to the extent that I will want to break it down. I don't want to speak audit language here, the jargons. But to the extent that the GSC can place reliance on the work of, or the external auditor, in this case, GSC can place reliance on the work of the internal audit, in this case, the RAA. What do I mean? The RAA is the first line of defense, if you may. So they conduct the audit there. So if the RAA or the internal auditor's work is good enough, the internal auditor can share report with the GSC. And if the GSC look at this report and say this report is good enough, then they can place a reliance on it to the extent that they don't have to repeat again in their work. They will incorporate some of the things that the RAA has already said. All right. They will just go and verify, but they will not do detailed work. You know, so they will place some we rely on this thing here, so there's no need. Just go and verify one or two things. With a fixed asset, just go see whether it is these things that they're talking about is there. And once it makes sense, then they do it on a select basis. Once they select few things in their report, they verify that, then they place reliance. But when they start seeing, when they don't place reliance on the report, then they will do the full-blown audit by itself. So that's the relationship. Now, the connectivity or the relationship of the duplication and effort with the other institution. LACC, for example, LACC is an investigative institution. They deal with corruption. That's why they say Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission, corruption within government. They have investigation, they have crime lab, they have all the 9 years, and their report can go directly. I mean, GSC internal audit report can go to GSC report, can also go to court. I mean, that's a story about the auditor in court. It can also go to court, depends on the gravity of the situation. Like I said, the PAC, the Public Account Commission, if the GSC submits its report to the PAC and the PAC decipher the report and they find out something that warrants somebody going to court, that report is used as evidence in court. So defense, I mean, prosecuting lawyers, in this case, Minister of Justice, will take that report. They will get educated on that report. They will find more evidences. They will investigate more. And sometimes that's where LACC comes in. Sometimes they can refer to LACC to investigate because GSC is not an investigator. It is a LACC that's an investigator, especially when it deals with corruption of government officials. If corruption, serious corruption is in the audit report, and also GSC also submits its report, copy of its report to LACC, as well as they submit copy of the report to FIU, the Financial Intelligence Unit. So GSC is the corruption investigative arm, totally for corruption. So if GSC, I mean, LACC can look at GSC report, and then there are issues that they need to go after. They need to do further real investigation and forward to court, yes. So that's the difference between two of them, but the relationship is the share. GSC shares its report with, or sometimes they just go on the GSC website and take things from there, which we will call investigation, we call open source. So they take those things from there and then they process it by themselves. And then
mention FIU.
Yeah, the FIU, on the other hand, the FIU deals with money business. The FIU follows the money. So, for example, so FIU could go on a GSC website, but the GSC does submit some of its report to FIU, especially some of those things that have to do with. And sometimes the FIU also help GSC and leads them into certain direction. The FIU follows the money. Now, the relationship, FIU is a central agency when it comes to money laundering, terrorist financing, and other illicit financial crime, like movement of money. Anything that has to do with money. Because it can be corruption, you did corruption, and then so FIU followed that money and provides information to investigators, whether if it is corruption, if it's related to corruption, they pass it on to LACC. LACC also required, because they all have different laws, they all have different things, and investigating team can use mutual legal assistance. The police can use what we call Interpol. They can use Interpol to gather information, but the FIU can give you ready information internally in the country and outside the country right there. Because FIU can talk to the FIU in Ghana, for example, and the FIU can give that information. Because FIU has certain rules on how to use that FIU thing is more confidential and all that stuff. So that's why you don't hear FIU people talking more, because their thing is more behind the scenes. Okay, so if they say Dennis Just has done something, and say, my man, give us that man whole profile, give the other man whole financial profile, he's supposed to be. Then when they trace the money, they could find out, oh, the man sending money to Venezuela. They could collect that other evidence. And to the extent that it is guided by standards, again, the law. In the FIU thing is international law. So the head of the FIU have to be very careful as to how it has to be guided, and it has to be for the purpose for which it was asked. You don't just give information. So yes, in the FIU also work with all these institutions. For example, FIU work with LRA, the tax organization, and leads LRA into direction. The FIU, the work with NSA. Least NSAs assist the NSAs with a lot of on the anti-terrorism side. So the FIU work with the police on different crimes, murder crime for money, as long as money is involved, as long as that crime was done for money, whether it's illicit child trafficking, whether it's drug trafficking, whether it's corruption, whether it's tax evasion, even whether it's murder or theft of property, as long as you got money out of it, and it depends on how you use that money, the FIU can make a report.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia Marketplace, where we discuss business, finance, and economics. Our topic today is auditing. My guest, Mr. Alex Cuffy. He's an auditing professional and also a lecturer on the university level all about auditing. Back to you, William.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, Mr. Coffey, let's get to something that's been in the news around lately that a lot of Liberians are concerned about in the diaspora and also in Liberia. In just 8 days, there's been some death, unexplained circumstances in Liberia. These appear to all be auditors, either in IAA or the LRA. From your work, is any suspicions that their work may be something to do, or is it justified?
Yeah, you know, I wouldn't want to invite emotions in this thing. But I will be guided by my the ethics and the code of ethics that I'm still guided by, because I'm still into anti-money laundering and international financial intelligence and stuff like that. There are a lot of things that I see. So I'm guided by these ethics and confidentiality. And as an investigator, especially a financial crime investigator, I wouldn't want to, be prejudicial, because I think, but on the surface of it, I think it raises concern, especially like one of my friends was talking this morning. I had a lot of calls since last night and up now. Even as I'm speaking to you, I'm aborting calls. Okay. But if you look at the friend I was talking about, he kind of joked and said people should get rid of, because now they're starting with E. So it's the auditors that are dying now. Let the bankers get ready, because we'll come to the bankers, then we'll come to the economists. Just go. So the people that are in zoology and say they're not worrying right now. So we just joke about it. But
and there are questions here for you on that.
Yeah.
I had a
Alex, let's do this. If you don't mind, let's take a step back, right? Because of course, we all know LRA is the Liberian Revenue Authority, but from watching and listening, it seems that there's an audit department in there as well.
Yes, okay. So the work that when I was at the FIU, we work with I would say yes, they have an internal audit division, which is a little bit unique, but those people are tax auditors. They are not the normal RAA auditors. They are tax auditors. They are tax investigators. In fact, one of the things that we worked at the FIU, when I was at the FIU, that was highlighted with our work, with our intervention with tax issues, tax malpractices, was for the LRA to step up its game in terms of developing not just audit, but tax malpractices investigators. So there was a whole process to train a whole lot of people.
Is that like here in the US where we say, oh, okay, I got a call from the IRS? I mean, we say, we say nobody wants to get a call from the IRS, because when they call you, it leads to something else. Is that what that branch would be? Is the looking at businesses or tax-paying entities and making sure that they're paying a fair share?
Yes and no. It's not the way the IRS, because you file your taxes here And if you don't pay your tax, they can call you and you can get trouble with it. So yes, it's the people you don't want to get in trouble with. It's the hold on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. You're tuning in, focus on Liberia. We're with Alex Cuffy, who's sharing insights on audit and what's going on with recent events in Liberia at the moment. Indeed, we are all concerned as Liberians, and so he's able to share a little bit of light. Go ahead, Mr. Cuffy.
Yeah, my apologies. Somebody just said.
No problem.
So yes, not the internal audit situation. That's why I say yes and no. This situation has to do with the involvement of FIU with LRA, not the usual place of somebody not paying their taxes and stuff like that. It is tax crime, tax evasion, and mostly businesses. For example, this is public information, so I will talk about it. For example, some of our interaction that led the LRA raise and getting more revenue, millions of dollars with the FIU. When I say our, I always talk about the FIU invasion and involvement. There are businesses, for example, who will evade tax by opening separate accounts. Now they have the business account, they'll operate it because the LRA knows the business account. So the LRA will ask the FIU, or by its own law, they have access to, but they have these other accounts that they funnel this money through. So they pay taxes based on, and then based on that income, which is now low because a certain lower amount of income they put in their business account. So two things happen. The LRA can categorize different businesses, small business, medium, large. So it's possible that because of that, they can be small business or medium business, and they got different rates. So they already evaded tax by that. Then the funds that they put on this in this other account, the LRA doesn't see it, so the LRA doesn't tax that. That's tax evasion. That's crime.
Yeah.
And then what they do is they because some of them are foreign companies, they ship this money abroad to their different countries. I won't call specific countries, but they ship this money to their other countries. And through the FIU work, the FIU was able to detect, through its following the money, detect that these things were happening. So the FIU worked with now these kind of things you needed. So when we report to the LRA, the normal internal audit doesn't have that capacity. So they needed to develop that crime. People who will go on the field to waste their life, and it's risky. You could get shot. You know, that's why the work of FIU is risky, because sometimes you're dealing with anti-terrorism.
You know, with people money.
Yeah, we're talking about people with international monies and all that stuff in terms of terrorism. They can hunt you down.
Mr. Cuffy, I know we want to move on, but more in depth. But please, in the U.S., when you go to make a deposit, some of the safeguards they have for anti-money laundering and the terrorism and so forth is the amount of money you can deposit without maybe them notifying the IRS that says that, hey, somebody just made a deposit above this amount. And here it's the $10,000. In Liberia, do we have anything like that where there's an amount that when you deposit what is above 1,000 or 4,000 or anything, that they get notified at the LRA? Not that they would launch an investigation, but just a notification, or no?
It's not the LRA. In the US, it's what we call the FinCEN.
Yes.
Yeah, the Financial Crime Enforcement group. They are the FIU of the United States of America. And the FIU in Liberia is the FIU. It's the FIU that there are two different types of report. The currency transaction report or cash transaction report is the one that is on the threshold. So by law or regulation, it can establish a threshold, and automatically, if William goes to deposit, if that threshold is $2,500, every time William deposit or withdraw, that information will come to.
Okay.
Yeah, it has to be reported to. So those one are databases, but those are sometimes you look at that report periodically, and you can make inference from those reports to look at people's attitude and all that stuff.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, let's go back to the question that William asked earlier about the. I don't think you finished that about this recent unexplained death and how any suspicion that the work as auditor may have something to do with it. What's your read about this whole thing?
Yeah, so as I wanted to say that I had an experience when I was working as an auditor in West Africa, specifically I worked with different projects in Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and then in Ghana. But there was a specific situation in Ghana where we went to do an inspection of projects. That was a World Bank loan. That was a World Bank project. The verification of non-performing loans and.
Go ahead, Mr. Cuffy.
Yeah, so we went on the field, and there's a guy who went to inspect a place, and he got blind. He got blind. There was another guy who was doing an inventory of a tobacco company, and he fell off in the tobacco. You know, that thing is hot. He fell in the middle. So it's risky for auditors. So, and recently, the thing is, it is, you know, in human minds, people can, you know, 4 auditors die in a matter of, according to what I read on Front Page Africa, in a matter of 8 days. Okay, is it just a coincidence? You know, initially when I early this morning when I first got information about Yusua, my friend Yusua, I thought in my mind it was coincidence. I mean, it was coincidence. It was an isolated case. I said, oh, people can die people can fall off from pressure. These things are hidden diseases in us. We move, we exercise, we look healthy, but we never know what we're carrying in our body. Cholesterol, everything I had related, cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes, those things are quite killers. So the initial person I talked to, that was my conclusion. Maybe he fell off because the person just told me he fell off. But later on, when we hear that he fell off from the building, something happened to his head and stuff like that, then it brings more question. Then you look at the 2 persons that died in a car. You know, I mean, Abba Peter is another good friend of mine. And I know Abba Peter is a man of integrity, he's a man of moral and stuff like that. We're not perfect. Nobody is perfect. Like I listen to his wife, and nobody is perfect. But at least I know Abba Peter, who would want to go do things like that, like the case is being portrayed initially, that they might have been doing something boyfriend-girlfriend business on Broad Street. Excuse me. All the different corners are in Liberia. Like, so it sounds strange that in your mind it would look like as somebody's trying to stage something. So, you know, it brings more doubt, it brings more question to me than answer. And those are the things that, as an investigator, things that point you to different direction. If that case was in US, that's an easy case to deal with. But now we've been finding if allegedly if they were killed. But you will make people to believe that okay, if they die in a car, why is it that somebody's arm broke according to what I read and what I heard? You know, there's so many pieces of the puzzle that says that it's not because of boyfriend-girlfriend business that they were.
Okay. But Mr. Cuffy, do we know any specific report or audit report that they were working on? Any of those that died?
Again, is what we're hearing. and what we're reading, there are different, two different scenarios here, which I really cannot talk to, but what I've heard is that, oh, there's something that has to do with revenue accounts, that Bureau of Revenue is supposed to go to consolidated account, but then there's some other account that was open. Then at one point I hear about something happening to people and they were doing audit. And so, you know, again, I can speak to that as to whether they were doing a specific audit report that may have led to them to be. And I had personal experience in Liberia after the PIT report. I can inject that, you know, that for me personally, it puts me into a trauma for me to have known what could have happened to me in Liberia, what I escaped from, and then knowing that these things are happening. So it creates something in my mind. But again, as an investigator, you don't inject your emotions on these kind of situations, so you don't run the wrong conclusion. Because sometimes people take what you say and run with it. So I don't want to say, I'm not sure whether there was a specific audit report, but this is what I heard. That's all I can say.
You just mentioned
what I do know as an investigator is the way the crime scene was set and the way the crime scene was managed. I don't think it was proper. And then also I know that this is an easy case. If this case was in another country, by now, because to me, it looks too cheap.
Let me read some comments on Facebook and question. This one from Nora Hawks. The first, Nora says, thank God you in America, you will not hit the parked truck on RIA highway. And then she also said, she also wrote, what happened to your audit report about the missing 16 billion or 25 million map-up money? I think she's referring to the PIT report. One more question here for Tavina Cole. How does GAC, LACC, and related agencies determine what audits to put on their yearly audit plan? Do they even have annual audit plans? Then the last question from Joe Cassell is a long one. My question is, who is vetting the reports from the auditors? For instance, in the UK, audit reports go through so many layers of vetting by different technical bodies and has an additional safeguard. Those reports are subject to additional review by the academic of Oxford University and the London School of Economics. A terrible audit can have a devastating and career-ending impact on an individual. So countries like the UK and the USA take a lot of precautions. Those are the three questions, Mr. Cuffy. You can pick any one you want.
Yeah, I will start with the last one with the vetting of the report. Yes, the person who asked the question, what's the name of the person again? The person
Joe
is right.
Joe
Cassell is right in terms of vetting process, because in the US, where I'm still into financial crimes and things like that, and those things go through, because you can make mistakes with people's profession. You can accuse somebody, just accusing the person from your hip. So yes, reports, but when it comes to Liberia, reports also go through processes. That's, for example, the audit report from the GSC goes to the PAC, the Public Account Commission. GSC does its own processing. So when a report is completed and assigned by the Auditor General, it goes to the public and it goes to the legislature. And then the legislature sends it to their arm, their technical arm, which is called the Public Account Commission Secretariat, the PAC Secretariat. They're supposed to have qualified people who's supposed to vet that report properly and make sure that most of the things that the auditor is saying, the Auditor General is saying, is correct. Then they have a hearing. Based on a hearing, at that hearing, people present they write to the people. In some cases, they write to the people. In some cases, they fall flat. Of course, I know they made some mistakes. They didn't, write to some people, and they put them in their report. But normally they're supposed to write to the people and they're supposed to submit copy of the report to the people, and the people are supposed to form their own defense because they come to a hearing, they come with documentation, they come with all things to exonerate them in the process. Maybe GSC did not have the time to do all that detailed work, all right? So that's why they do the vetting. And then once they do their vetting, they prepare a report, which they call the PAC report, and they send it to the legislature review it. And then before they send it to the president for action. So there's that vetting process is laid out by regulation and policy document, by law, regulations and policy document that goes. LACC, on the other hand, of course, they are investigator arm. So if they get those things, they investigate, they go detail, they take things to crime lab, they do this, they do all kinds of stuff like any organization in any part of the world, and they submit their findings to prosecution, which is the Ministry of Justice. And the law provides that if the Ministry of Justice does not act in 30 days, they can go directly to court, and they have lawyers. So yes, there is some vetting process that goes on in Liberia. I always say that Liberia has laws, regulation, they have system, but we lack the qualified people and the people with guts, with integrity to implement, to enforce those laws that we have on the books. And that again, it falls on our leadership crisis that we've been having for years. Audit plans, I answered that. The person that asked the question on audit plan, I answered that question. Yes, the GSC has an audit plan, and there are bases on which their audit strategy is formed. For example, with all the entities in Liberia, local, who has more percentage of the budget. So the Minister of Finance has 30 million of the budget. I'm just throwing a figure out there. And then it's a good percentage, maybe it's 5% or 10%. Or sometimes they can set that threshold, say anybody from 10% of the total government budget. So the government budget is 570,000, 570 million. And you have 5% of that budget, you're subject to audit automatically. So they have an audit plan that is guided by international standard, international and social standard, and they do an audit plan on the date that they're going to go there, and the human being, the people, the different level of staff that are going to be on that particular audit. So they do that. So likewise, the internal audit agency. The PIT report.
Yeah.
You say, where is it?
Yeah, you say, what happened to your report?
The two aspects of the report, the 16 billion and the 16 billion Liberian dollars and the 25 million report. Let me talk about the 25 million. And again, I would say, unfortunately, the report was sent to the GSC. Yes, even though the GSC did a good work, but that was a misstep because they honor like I told you earlier, the president can ask the GSC to do certain kind of work. But in this case, investigators did their work. The PIT included the LACC, and in fact, LACC was the chair of the PIT. It was not FIU, it was not me. It was the LACC. I don't want to call people name, but it was the LACC that was the head, that was the chairman. The Liberia National Police was the co-chairman of the PIT. The FIU was the secretary and the spokesman, the spokesperson. Then National Security Agency, NSA, was a member. So there were 4 institutions that made up the PIT as was set up by the president of Liberia, His Excellency George Mane Weah. Okay, so the report was done. Investigators did their report. That included most of the investigative arm of the government. Audit is an assurance services. You don't, even though the president can ask to the GSC to perform, but that's this type. So you can take an investigative report, and you will note that in the conclusion of the 25 million salary report, it calls for further forensic investigation. And there's a reason why the PIT did that. The PIT did not have, because you talk about, I explained about forensic investigation. If you talk about somebody dead, somebody can be buried for 6 months. When you're doing forensic investigation on that dead body, you can exhume that body and bring that body to the lab to check for certain things. That's forensic. So yes, granted, the GSC did a good job, a relatively good job, but it was not supposed to go to the GSC because the GSC is audit, it's not investigation. The investigators already did their work. Then you take the report, then you send it back to the LACC to do another investigation. So that is why the PIT said, well, we want forensic investigation. So you should have given it back to the LACC, right away you're giving it to the LACC to do that forensic investigation, or you're giving it back to the same PIT to do the forensic, because they said, the PIT said, because we didn't have enough time, because we didn't have the financial resources to do that, because it calls for, you note that the, signatures needed to be reviewed, phone calls needed to be tracked, because some, if you look at even the GSC report, it tells you that calls were made to some people and they did not respond. People that were supposed to, that should have received in the report that they said received the money, they called them. So,
and Mr. Cuffy, I want us to even have a separate discussion on that PIT report so that we can really go through it and be specific. So just conclude on that so we can move on to the next.
Yeah, so in my opinion, it shouldn't have gone to GSC, but nevertheless, it went to GSC and it came back to the LACC. And to the person who asked that question, I don't know where that portion of the report is right now. The last time I know, I heard they did a report, LACC did a report, and that report is still somewhere that I don't know, because I'm no longer in Liberia. I'm not in tune with those stuff. On the 16 billion, the 16 billion went to court, and as you know, the court has rendered a decision. Now that the decision has been rendered, I have a problem with that decision, but again, different things went into play. There was the claim to try to exonerate the claim. So there are things, the PITs, after the claim made its report, the PIT submitted additional evidences that the prosecution did not admit. And so the prosecution too, they too had their own thing to do there. And also the judge had their things to do there. There are a lot of things that went into play. People tried to change the narrative, to put it, Cuffy wanted a job, that's why he did a report. I was not the only person who did a report. Cuffy wanted this, and all that different narrative they tried to change. But I will tell you what, be it as it may, that report still remains standing. And it's good that the judge who said that, who rendered his decision, also in his ruling said that the PIT did a great job. But then he ended up with a statement. How do you say that the PIT did a great job, and you turn around and say, oh, they tried to make the public to believe that money, their evidence is there. Those additional evidences were presented. And the prosecution ignored those additional evidences. So the whole conspiracy about the PIT report tried to use people's hands to do certain things that you wanted to do anyway. But again, we're still living, and that report is still live. That report is still live. So, question, the person who asked that question, my answer to you is those reports are still live.
Yeah, live. All right. So I don't want to go into speculation, but what can, in the case of our internal auditor, especially those who lost their lives recently, what can they possibly find that may threaten their life? What is possible?
But that could threaten their life. Auditors, people who are in investigation, every part of the world, not just Liberia, every part of the world, every day even police, ordinary police, about shooting, whether they're shooting the people who are supposed to commit the crime or the police being shot. Every day people get out there, law enforcement get out there, they're afraid that something will happen to them. They got a family to go back home to. So it's the same way with auditors and investigators. Their life is there always. So, and again, it depends on the environment, the terrain, and different situations that we have on, and the kind of audit that they're going to, because not all audit put risk to you, not all terrain put risk to you. If the terrain or the country, the situation is volatile, it has to do with high profile people who have resources to cause harm, yes, then people can be at risk. But if it's an ordinary investigation, or any ordinary job law, then maybe the risk is less. Okay, so it depends on the situation, depends on the timing and stuff like that. When we did the investigation on the PIT, for example, I'm just giving an example. Yes, we also were being careful. And after everything else, of course, in hindsight, I had to leave the country because my life was threatened.
Really?
Yes, you can be threatened.
Now, that wasn't something that you had made public, was it, that your life was threatened?
Yes, sir.
Where you think that threat came from, do you know?
I work in, sometimes I would say, Gulf West. And because I work in an intelligence organization second, so I thank God for my life.
That's it?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Cuffy, we can thank you enough for shedding some light on this whole audit process.
Dennis,
I think this is part one
Dennis,
of the auditing. We need to have a complete series.
Dennis.
Let me learn. We need to have a complete series on this whole process of auditing in Liberia, because we've just done the overview. So we'll have time to more and more go into this because there's so much to uncover. Yes, Mr. CA.
Well, I have a comment here from Nora Hawks. Nora Hawks writes, Mr. Cuffy, why are you feeling so bad about Yunswa's death? Have you forgotten about your own blacklist and city seeking to power that you were proud to talk about? I don't know what Nora is talking about. Any idea,
Right.
Mr. Cuffy? Were you on a blacklist?
Let me start with the first part of the question. Why am I feeling bad about Niswa's death? Niswa is my friend. If a good friend of yours passed, of course you will feel bad. So I'm feeling bad, especially it's been for anybody. If you went to the hospital and died in the hospital, you die from natural causes or whatever, and people will feel bad. So he's my friend, and the fact that he passed, it will, it will put me in a mournful situation. And so right now I'm a little bit down because of his death. Now talking about blacklist, there was some list that went around some time ago when I was in Liberia, and I don't know what the person mean by I was proud to talk about that list. There was some list that went around, my name was on. It was even published by Front Page Africa. People that were to be eliminated, quote unquote. There was those lists that went around, but so that thing was in the public domain. Whether it came from a source or what, I don't know what source it came from, but there was a list that I read on Front Page Africa, and my name was on that list. I don't know where it came from, what was it about. Yeah.
All right.
I know what happened to me personally, but I don't know about list. Why people name NLM list. I know what happened to me and why it happened to me, but I don't know about list.
Okay, let me read a few more questions and then we'll conclude. I think time is fast spent. Admiral K. Salif said, did the FIU during your tenure find Liberia vulnerable as a potential money laundering hub, drug transit, terrorism, material support, or as a port for foreign tax invasion?
Yeah, I mean, you know that you're a scholar. So there are different reports that points to Liberia being transit point for some of those activities, and in fact, some of the background write up leading to the formation of the FIU. Those things are in those reports, whether a United Nations reports, whether a CIA, USA CIA report, and things like that. Those things are there; they are written out there. But that what led to the formation of some of these organizations, especially the FIU, and the FIU has done and is still doing some work that is countering some of those things.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Cuffy. We'd like to bring down the curtains. We can thank you enough. And as I said, you're going to be back. And fortunately, you are part of Everywhere Marketplace. So thank you so much. Let's conclude by getting your final thoughts.
Well, my final thoughts is that we should all as Liberians, especially to all Liberians, we have a country. We should all try to pray for our country, try to pray for our leader, try to pray for our government officials, try to pray for the people of Liberia in general, that we may have peace and lasting peace, and that all this noise that is happening in our country, every week you wake up, there's something. We pray that these things will be brought under control. I mean, things used to happen in the past, but it's like these days, it's like every day. So my only thing is I continue to be on my knees and I ask all Liberians, the women grew, the men grew, the children, the youth, that we should pray. We should continue to pray with our season, pray for our leader, Josh Weah, pray for our ministers, pray for our government officials, pray for our country, pray for the situation in the country. That our country may see good light, that our country may turn around. And for all of us Liberians, that we may not return to the dark days. For all Liberians, to protect our lives and everything else, that we may one day join those that are back home to move our country forward. So hear me, Lord.
Amen. William, you can close us tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alex Cuffy, for joining us. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Focus on Liberia, where we strive to educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We've pretty much starting or opening a series on audit, the profession, the dangers, the risk, and everything that comes involved with this job in light of the unfortunate incident that happened in Liberia. And so please stay tuned for more in this series as we dig deeper with Mr. Alex Cuffy in our show later on in the series. Also, just want to let everybody know, following up, that this evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to be having Alex Chuchu Jones as a guest panelist on Focus on Liberia, where he will be dissecting and looking at the president candidate, Mr. Alexander Cummings, and talking a little bit more about that from the political side with Anthony Sia. And so please tune in and dial in to Focus on Liberia. With that being said, we want to thank our audience. Thank you for listening. Please share. Focus on Liberia. Click, add us, like us. Click that notification button so that when we come on, you can get notified that we are on. And so once again, thank you to our viewers, and back to you, Dennis. Wrap up quickly. I think we have our song, and then we're moving on.
On behalf of all of us here at Focus on Liberia, we say thank you and have a good day. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you.
We all are